Not long before the explosion of the bubonic plague, there were a series of wars in the Black Sea, a dispute between the Mongols and the Italian merchants along with a group of Muslims. Little did the Europeans know that there was already an existing outbreak in Mongol and that these Mongols have been carrying this disease with them. The war kept going on until Muslims were killed and the Italians were left with no other choice but to flee and go to Kaffa, now known as Feodosia, which is a city in the country of Ukraine. Followed the Italians, the Mongols also reached the land of Kaffa and the war continued, in which Mongol purposely put the bodies of the dead Mongolian warriors over the walls of the city, which caused the first outbreak of the disease in Europe. Both Italian merchants and Mongolian warriors were almost wiped out. A very small number of Genovese survivors were able to escape by sea route and had reached Constantinople in May of 1347. Unfortunately, 90% of the people in that ship were infected and had died. Those who were alive fled and spread to the mainland of Italy, and that was when the plague has officially started in Europe.
Before this pandemic that the world is facing today, the world was so busy. Everyone was caught up in pursuing their dreams, doing their passion, working for their family and goals, and enjoying the beauty of the world. Modernization went so fast and almost every aspect of society has been globalized. The 21st century is an era in which most part of the world are experiencing massive intellectual and technological advancement. However, these developments have brought along various devastation to the environment, which then affected animal and human life. In the year 2019, different catastrophes happened in the different parts of the world. There were great disasters affecting and threatening the lives of hundreds and thousands of people as well as animals. And then in December 2019, the first case of yet to be known disease appeared in China. Investigators and researchers believe it to have been originated in the province of Hubei, in Wuhan City in particular. This disease is said to have been caught up from ingesting animal meat being sold at the restaurants in the Huanan seafood market that has been infected with the virus. The rest of the world thought China could contain and eliminate this disease right away. However, in one just snap, everything changed and the rest is history. The disease has been identified as SARS-CoV-2, most commonly known as the COVID-19. It was on the 30th of January 2020 when the World Health Organization declared a public health emergency of international concern, which required all the countries to undergo lockdowns.
Black Death, particularly the bubonic plague, is considered as the great mortality, causing the death of an estimated 25 million people from different parts of the world, but most especially from Europe, during the 14th century or the latter part of the medieval period. It is believed to have been originated in Asia, specifically in China in the year 1334, and spread throughout Europe in October 1347. The infection spread through contacts with rodents or the parasitic fleas on rodents that carried the bacterium called Yersinia pestis. The Black Death is a very contagious disease that can infect one person to another through a mere contact or touchings of clothes. And it does not discriminate anyone, healthy or not, young or old. Everyone may die within more or less than a week from the day the person has been infected. The lymphatic system, which is a part of the circulatory system and the immune system, is the identified target of the bacillus, which makes it a very dangerous and deadly disease. To identify if a person has been infected by the disease, various symptoms have been observed. Symptoms include severe swelling in the groin and armpit area, primarily the lymph nodes, leaving a black-colored bruise. These bruises cause body sores, and the inflamed area means that there have been internal hemorrhages, a violent and recurring fever, as well as pains in the joints, or other symptoms of the infection. This bubonic plague is known to have between 30% to 70% fatality rate, which would kill a person usually within 72 hours. Aside from the bubonic plague, Black Death also comes in the form of the septicemic plague and pneumonic plague. Septicemic plague can cause a person to experience abdominal pain, tissue bleeding, and death, while pneumonic plague causes chest pain, shortness of breath, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and cough.
The SARS-CoV-2 is a new strain of virus that comes from the family of coronaviruses, targeting and affecting the respiratory system of the person infected. Up to this day, it is still uncertain as to what animal carried the virus, but there were lots of speculations that it came from bats, rodents, or pangolins. The first case of the virus was recorded to have appeared in Wuhan, China in December of 2019. The virus is being transmitted through direct contact with infected people by respiratory droplets, sneezing, coughing, or even talking to other people at a distance lesser than a meter apart, or touching things that have been directly in contact with an infected person cause the spread of the virus. There are two classifications of patients infected by the coronavirus: the symptomatic and the asymptomatic. Symptomatic refers to those people who have experienced COVID-19 symptoms, including fever, dry cough, and fatigue as the most common symptoms. Body aches and pains, sore throat, diarrhea, loss of taste and smell, among others as the less common symptoms, and difficulty and shortness of breath, chest pain or pressure, and loss of speech and movement as the serious symptoms. On the other hand, asymptomatic patients generally shows no signs of being infected by the virus. And it is important to take note that it usually takes a week or two for the symptoms to appear to the infected person.
Symptoms have already been identified, but to make sure whether a person has been infected or not, they underwent testing or diagnosis. The way it has been done in the Middle Ages reflect the poor medical system and the lack of medical technology and equipment during this time. During the medieval period, people often go to barber surgeon to know if they have been infection or not. One of the diagnostic process is peeing on the cup, and the barber surgeon would have to check and analyze it by smelling, or worse is by testing it, which is undeniable, disgusting, and incorrect. This process alone depicts how bad the medical situation was during the Middle Ages. Another thing is that during this time, the human anatomy, how each system in the human body works, is not yet known to the people, which is why it was hard for them during the time to discover the cure. Eventually, people ended up believing that plague was punishable from God for all the sins people have committed to Him, like greed, blasphemy, worldliness, among others, and there is no other way to end up but to pray. And what contributed to this mindset was the fact that people during this time were very religious.
As soon as symptoms were identified, massive contact tracing and mass testings through swab tests and rapid PCR tests were conducted in different parts of the world. At first, it was hard because of the limited supply of testing kits. And the topmost priority for these kits are the older adults and people with underlying medical conditions, as well as the medical frontliners. Many lives of medical health workers were taken away at the early stage of the spread of the virus, primarily because of the limited knowledge and the still ongoing studies about it, and also because there was not enough personal protective equipment yet. What made it hard for the world to function was the lockdowns. Many businesses closed. People were stuck at home, too scared to go out and even go to work. Social distancing, quarantine, and wearing of face masks and face shields have been implemented to control the spread of the virus. In the Philippines, children below the age of 14 and elders aged 60 and above are not allowed and encouraged to go out without valid and necessary appointments. Fortunately, there are already available vaccines to fight against the virus, although they are not yet enough for the population of the world. Still, the existence of vaccines signifies hope to the people.
The Black Death lasted for 5 years during the medieval period and its end gave birth to another period known as Renaissance. It has been said that it never really ended and it reappears from time to time even to this day. However, during the Middle Ages, they have done many precautionary measures to control and slow down its spreading throughout Europe by having ships and sailors isolated. People who were inside those ships were required to stay there for 40 days at first, which was increased to 40 days, thus the term quarantine. And only if they show no symptoms of the plague after the quarantine period were they are allowed to step foot in the land. Hence, there were no vaccines rolled out during this time, and they only did quarantines and social distancings to keep themselves away from being infected. Black Death was officially ended during the Middle Ages in the year 1853. Today, proper sanitation and public health practices along with vaccines help it in mitigating plagues and threatening Black Death.
COVID-19 has been around for 1 year and 4 months now. There are already 131 million cases recorded with 74.5 million people who have recovered and 2.85 million deaths worldwide. Some countries are finally able to eliminate the virus and are now back to how life was before COVID-19 happened, the old normal way of living, while some are still having a hard time of coping up and lowering the number of cases. This pandemic is expected to not end just yet within this year. The virus continues to mutate and create new variants which spread rapidly. But with vaccines being rolled out in the market and being given by the government of every country for free, people have felt relieved. However, it is undeniable that until today, the economy of almost every country in the world has been greatly affected due to the closure of various industries and establishments.
Both Black Death and SARS-CoV-19 originated in Asia, specifically especially in China. People wore masks during both epidemics to protect themselves from being infected by the disease and virus. The existence of pneumonic plague is the reason why people wore masks during the Middle Ages. Precautionary measures such as quarantine and social distancing were observed to contain the spread of both Black Death and COVID-19. Symptoms appear within a week for Black Death, while for COVID-19, it is around a week or two. The way of transmission is different from one another. Black Death is transmitted through contacts with parasitic fleas on rodents, or the rodents themselves, which carry the bacteria, while COVID-19 is transmitted through the inhalation of respiratory droplets, or direct contact with people infected by the virus, or the materials they have touched which are already suspected to have been contaminated by the virus. People in the medieval period thought that the epidemic was a punishment from God, which correlates to the strong influence of religion during this time. While many people of today's generation think that COVID-19 is a biological warfare. Black Death is far more fatal and contagious than COVID-19. It is for the fact that the plague could kill the person infected within 2 days if it is not treated quickly enough. On the other hand, most of the cases of fatality recorded for COVID-19 tells that the most susceptible complications only appear to older adults and people with an underlying medical condition.